Broker has always been a mysterious figure, and not just in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where fans of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series spent some time trying to decipher the Power Broker's true identity. Even now, some people still do not believe to this day that the reveal is even the true one, and there are still some out there that theorize there could still be a Power Broker working behind Sharon Carter and simply using her as a front for their true identity. In the comics, Power Broker has always been a villain shrouded in mystery, and even today we still do not know the true identity of the modern day Power Broker from the comics. Initially, Power Broker was Curtis Jackson, but even before his death in 2012, there had been a new Power Broker that was introduced on the scene, making their first appearance in Avengers The Initiative Annual in 2008. Their identity still remains unknown, I believe. It's been more than 10 years and we're still not sure exactly who that is. The more modern version of Power Broker even still hasn't been seen since 2023. What are some villains that you haven't seen for some time that you would like to see come back? Definitely one of the weirdest weirdos out there for me is this next villain we're about to talk about. Even his name just sounds so cosmically weird and fantastic. Xemnu. Now, Xemnu might not be a full-on Avengers team villain, but he is a villain of one of the mainstay Avengers, the Hulk. He was an alien cyborg prisoner who escaped from exile only to crash land on Earth. Xemnu initially hoped to control the minds of the people of Earth and get them to build him a new spaceship. Now, the problem with this new spaceship is that it would be so powerful that its launch would in essence destroy the Earth. Tell you what, that's definitely a cosmic criminal right there. Xemnu is a psionic being who can hypnotize his victims and control their minds. He can also use hosts to heal himself, in essence transforming their body into his until there is simply nothing resembling them or their mind left. Even stranger, Xemnu was technically the first character to be known as the Hulk before the creation of the Bruce Banner turned Green Giant version of that character. While Xemnu was recently brought back during the often praised Immortal Hulk run, since he was dealt with there, he has only made a few more appearances. And mysteriously too, since during Immortal Hulk I believe he was permanently defeated there. We haven't seen Xemnu since his brief appearance though in the Infinity comic X-Men Unlimited, which can exclusively be read digitally on the Marvel Unlimited app. Xemnu anyways last appeared there in 2022. Honestly, one of the deeper cuts on our list is this next one, Space Phantom, or Space Phantoms sometimes. Initially believed to be the name of the character, we would later learn through various retcons that Space Phantom was more of a title or like a label than a true individual character name. Space Phantom is known for being a sower of chaos. Initially in the comics, Space Phantom made their first appearance in Avengers issue number 2, where they attempted to invade Earth by nullifying the Avengers team, shapeshifting into various characters in order to sow discord between the Avengers. Space Phantom initially claimed to be from space and claimed they were just kind of scouting ahead to get ready for an alien invasion that was behind them. And while this at some point might have been true, it's now believed that Space Phantoms actually hail from temporal limbo. Not Magic's limbo, but instead Immortus's realm, which exists outside of time. But while in limbo, they were basically warped during their stay there. They have also been used as agents of Immortus, the Kang variant, in the past as such. The Red Ghost started out as a Fantastic Four villain. He is a Russian communist who was known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers, of course. Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship that went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the power to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost, and he became a leader of these super apes. Later on, he would team up with the Mole Man and end up fighting against the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank with his team of super apes. Red Ghost also made his most recent appearance in an Avengers comic, I believe, although not the main title, not the main Avengers team. Instead, he appeared back in 2021 in Savage Avengers written by Jerry Dugan. Baron Zemo is one of my favorite villains when it comes to any and all that he opposes, but I think I especially love him as an Avengers villain, to be honest with you. Zemo, while certainly dangerous on his own, is also well known for leading his own popular villain group, the Masters of Evil. Not only is this group formidable as rivals to the Avengers, but they also at one point attempted to defeat the Avengers by, get this, replacing them. Yeah, this was when Baron Zemo came up with the plan to basically disguise the team of villains and rebrand them as a hero group, attempting to beat the Avengers at literally their own game. Enter the Thunderbolts. The initial Thunderbolts team, that is, it wouldn't be revealed until after this team had made a name for themselves both in canon and in comics who they truly were, and it was quite the impressive twist. When it comes to Zemo's recent appearances, he hasn't really been around much lately. We haven't seen him in the comics since he was most relevant as well in the MCU in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He last appeared in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier miniseries in the comics, which came out, like I said, around the time of the Disney Plus streaming series, so kind of in line with that. And Zemo was also, of course, featured in the Disney Plus series. We haven't seen him in the MCU or in the comics, I believe, since then really, although some folks are likely still hopeful in regards to the MCU version of Zemo that he'll be making some kind of appearance in Thunderbolts, I'm sure, but I'm still not sure if that's gonna happen. Annihilus is a weird but iconic villain. He hails from the Negative Zone and is also insectoid in his appearance. Annihilus basically has a cosmic magic wand that we know as the Cosmic Control Rod that he uses in his attempt to take over the Negative Zone. In more recent appearances, however, Annihilus chose to wear this rod as a sort of protective accessory, using it to protect himself against naturally occurring dangers such as aging, heat, and cold, in addition to gaining the ability to fly through space. He also initially became a villain of the Fantastic Four because they borrowed his cosmic rod to help treat the Invisible Woman during her pregnancy, which of course bothered Annihilus greatly, even though, to be fair, they did actually return it. So while Annihilation is probably one of the most well-known events and stories involving Annihilus, he has actually been seen since then being used by Jonathan Hickman in his Avengers run, and also being used to fight against the Cancerverse in Annihilation Scourge. But that was back in 2019, so it's been a while since we've seen him in the spotlight as either a villain or a reluctant ally. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the epic Fear Itself event in terms of Marvel's chronological print history, and of course became overshadowed by that. Ultimately, it also felt less planned out, I would say. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikaboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his power to reverse life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in their origin though when it came to their magic type. As cool of a character as the Chaos King was, however, we haven't really seen him since the primary event he was featured in, Chaos War. Honestly, I'd be down to see him come back. It's been like a really long time. You can make him a mastermind of something and people probably wouldn't even be expecting to see him because it's been so long. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have, well, more villainous motives, of course. Tremont specifically used this organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers, to basically discredit them. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races and just tried to ruin their image completely. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Pagan in an attack specifically against the Avengers, which he then actually used to blame the superhero team for all the destruction that the fight had caused. What's truly wild is although this organization is not one of the most well-known Avengers enemies and they haven't been featured recently, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a bit. Surprisingly, despite their successes, however, we haven't really seen them for, I think, over 20 years in the comics. They just kind of faded away. Honestly, we should bring them back. They're pretty cool.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Mojo. I'll start this list off with a rather fun one. Not that any villain isn't fun, but when Mojo's involved, it always gets a little too weird in some way. He made his first debut in Longshot issue 3. Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. So we're all actors. I'm in your screen right now. I'm actually part of Mojo's universe. I'm not even real. And his power increases the more viewers that he gets for this interdimensional TV show. So if you subscribe and like this video, maybe I'll get more powerful too, who knows? He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings. They're from a planet called Mojo World, of course, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So it's all about him, we get it. He messes with the Avengers in a pretty dramatic way as well, especially in Avengers Annual 1, The Avengers of the Supernatural. Wow, there is a title right there. So in this issue, Mojo abducted the Avengers and created another supernatural version of the team. And if that wasn't weird enough, he made them participate in this reality show called Martian Transylvania Superhero Mutant Monster Hunter High School, which is just a mouthful. Basically, the mutants of the Unity Division were goths, the others were football players and cheerleaders, and the Avengers of the Supernatural were nerds. So he likes to play it weird. And before we continue on with this list of Avengers villains, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us more power by giving us a like down there, and if you haven't subscribed already, you might as well click that, and then you can see all our videos pop up. We do all the work for you. We'll just show up in your phone. Number 9, the Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the canisters broke open, covering him in gamma radiation. God, everybody is so clumsy in comics all the time. Just so many spills. So of course, after the spill, Stearns survived just like Banner did after his gamma accident, but the only difference was it affected him in a much different way. See, he didn't get angrier, he got smarter and smarter, because now his brain could absorb so much more and more information. It actually got to a point where his physical body started to mutate. So now he has this giant green brain head. His head just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It looks like a gushy balloon just about to pop any second. Of course he's a villain. Look at his head. I mean, no offense, but come on, I'd be upset too. That's all I'm saying. I'd be pretty upset. He started to refer to himself as the Leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind, and he clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding once. He's kind of a jerk. But he's gone after the Avengers as well. When the Red Hulk gave Stearns red gamma treatment to enhance him even more, becoming the Red Leader, he became a member of the Thunderbolts. Number 8, the Mandarin. Ah yes, the first time Marvel told us that the popular enhanced individual was actually an actor all along. The Mandarin. He was in Iron Man 3, kind of. I mean, I'm including him on this list because that version wasn't even close to what he's really like. He made his first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 50. While exploring the inside of a cave in the Valley of the Spirits, he found an alien ship and a passenger still in there as well, named Axon Carr. But while he was there, he also saw 10 rings, these powerful rings, each representing a new power. So he took them, because he's a villain. Then after finishing off the alien pilot, he began to study these rings and he began mastering them as well. So if he wears them all at once, his mind will be reached by the spirits trapped within the rings. Yeah, he's a pretty sick villain. And then in Iron Man 3, his name's Trevor and he just crushes beer. Number 7, Grim Reaper. This next one we thought we were going to see in WandaVision, but we thought wrong. We thought maybe if it wasn't Mephisto, it's probably Grim Reaper, but we were wrong on both. The Grim Reaper did not show up, but his silhouette did for a hot second, maybe. Eric Williams made his debut back in Avengers issue 52. He's the brother of Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. He was considered a black sheep of the family, and when he was younger, he accidentally burnt down his house after, you guessed it, being clumsy with chemicals. The usual. So his brother felt responsible for not stopping him or being there for him when watching him. So after that, he began to watch him closely, a little bit too close, because Eric then became rebellious because of the supervision, and then soon he ended up with the Magia in Las Vegas while his brother stayed and took over the family business. So with the business failing, no thanks to Stark being the top dog in innovation, he turns to his brother for some mob help to get things going again. So Simon embezzled money with Eric, but Simon got caught and thrown into the slammer. Went thrown right to jail. So Baron Zemo approached him, asked for help to take out the Avengers, and revenge on Stark was included, so he was like, sure, this sounds like a pretty sweet gig. So then he got turned into Wonder Man, but he ended up saving the Avengers from Zemo's trap. He turned, he went good guy. But his brother, Eric, he heard of Simon's untimely departure, so he got angry and felt tremendous guilt after this. So he contacted the Tinkerer, who gave him a scythe. Then he took on the name of Grim Reaper, and voila, we now have a pretty badass villain. Number 6, Enchantress, aka Amora. She made her first debut in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and she has a love-hate relationship with Thor. And I'm not gonna lie, she's got a pretty sweet gig. She's got multiple mansions throughout the 9 realms, and she can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even if she gets stood up on prom, she's gonna cry a few diamonds, and then she has more bling for the next date. So it's a win-win. She's really good at seducing people as well, like Scourge, for example. She would seduce him into helping her with her evil plans. But Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just play hard to get, and she would mess with his mind and his heart. Now in the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster, but when she tried to attack Jane, of course, her love Thor intervened, and that's when she was banished to Earth by Odin. And then her next logical step as a villain is to join the Masters of Evil and get in line for taking down Thor or any of his annoying super teammates. Her tool is seduction. Just one kiss, and that's all it takes to make you fall under her control. She doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because she doesn't really need it. She just gets other dudes to fight her battles for her. What a boss. Number 5. Kang. This guy we can actually look forward to knowing more about soon, as he's confirmed for the next Ant-Man sequel with actor Jonathan Majors set to play him. But just who is Kang the Conqueror? Why is this a big deal for the Avengers? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on beings from any of those timelines. He's super smart and of course travels with armies, with each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry, so the fights aren't exactly easy by any means. The time travel stuff also doesn't come without consequence either. See, as Kang travels more and more through time, he creates time-displaced duplicates, and with the cosmic multiversal route that Marvel's going with now in the MCU, and especially with Loki's show, we could probably look forward to some more mind-bending battles. Number 4, Taskmaster. Taskmaster made his first comic book debut in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. Although he is one guy, he has this ability where he can copy your every move. So he can replicate your physical skills, he has photographic reflexes, so he can watch Black Widow take down an evil henchman, and bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows how to do the same type of combat as well. He's actually the villain of the Black Widow movie, but that has yet to come out due to COVID delays, so the general public doesn't really know how cool this guy is yet. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains and agents, one of those agents being US agent John Walker, who is currently turning heads for all the wrong reasons in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who taught Walker how to throw Cap's shield so well. In Avengers issue 196, he was able to capture Yellow Jacket, the Wasp, and Ant-Man, and then when the rest of the team showed up, he took them on as well, only being defeated because he could not predict the movements of the robot Jocasta. Otherwise, it's a tough battle, this one for sure. Number 3, Mephisto. While on the topic of characters that we wanted to see in the MCU, I of course gotta talk about the devil himself. He made his first appearance as a serpent in Bible Tales for Young Folk issue 1, but he made his first full appearance as Mephisto in Silver Surfer issue 3. I don't think I have to explain too much about this guy or why he's a threat. I mean, he's Satan. He's the literal devil of the Marvel Universe. He lives comfortably in hell with lesser demons that serve him. The reason we thought we were gonna get Mephisto in WandaVision goes back to something he did in the comics, which was kind of a big deal. The comic was Avengers West Coast Volume 2, issue 52. We find out the truth behind Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy, who were in WandaVision. Now it turns out the 5 pieces of Pandemonium's soul were actually Mephisto. So Mephisto tricked Pandemonium and gathered beings possessing the appropriate fragments, and 2 of those 5 fragments just happened to be children of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision. So when Pandemonium arrived, he took the kids, which in turn gave Mephisto full strength, and this left Scarlet Witch having a breakdown. Mephisto's awesome. His deals are always crazy. Like after the comic Civil War, when everybody knew Spider-Man's identity, Spider-Man had to make a deal with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May because she got shot because he revealed his name to the public. So he's pretty wild. That's just one of many horrible deals. Number 2, MODOK. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, MODOK was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. So enter Project MODOK. Spelt with a C at the end, not a K, that's important. So MODOK stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Computing. Sounds like the perfect tool to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. I mean, he's already a villain. You guys are just kind of making this happen for him. The scientists did not prepare that with great power comes great superiority, so it wasn't long before MODOK overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, MODOK, which stood for Mental Organism Designed Only for Killing. He's the big bad villain in the new Avengers PS4 game, and he's as crazy as it sounds in that game as well. And finally, number 1, Morgan Le Fay. Now, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe leaning into the witch madness for the conclusion of WandaVision, we might actually get to see Morgan Le Fay on the big screen soon enough. She made her first appearance in Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955, and she's been a recurring villain to the Avengers in the comics for a while now. And when the Dark Avengers were formed by Norman Osborn, Morgan was their first enemy to face off against. She's a powerful spellcaster, one of those spells being reality warping by using these Norn stones. So she packs a punch. Elizabeth Hurley actually plays Morgan Le Fay in the show Runaways, and she's great when it comes to these witchy, devilish roles. I mean, she literally played the devil in the movie Bedazzled as well, which is pretty funny. She was made for the role, it seems.
And at number 10, Unicorn Loki. This is perhaps one of the strangest, craziest transformations the trickster god has pulled off over the years in the Earth 616 continuity. A unicorn. A freaking unicorn. So this went down in Loki Agents of Asgard issue 8, which was part of the Avengers and X-Men Axis story event, in which Red Skull harnesses Charles Xavier's abilities and the world gets really weird and full of hate. At the time, Loki was trying to be an upright hero, fighting for truth, justice, and the Asgardian way. Literally, the cover had the words heroic protagonist on it. This unicorn thing was what he claimed was a fast way to travel, using the purest magic. He would declare by the power of Asgard like some Prince Adam He-Man motherfucker and transform into this galloping white wonder with a rainbow mane and tail, because of course he would have a rainbow mane and tail. As you can imagine, the fandom was a little bit split on this one. For starters, some saw the rainbowness of his unicorn as being a nice shout out to the fact that the character has a fluid sexuality, but the other half of the fandom decided to meme the crap out of it. His reasoning in the comics as to why he transformed into a unicorn of all creatures was because it was meant to represent an animal that didn't represent a symbol of trickery. And at number 9, Earth 9997. Earth 9997, also known as Earth X, features a more archaic looking Loki, who discovers that the Asgardians aren't really gods, but rather long-living mutants who are mind-locked by the Celestials, who have tricked them into believing that they are immortal. When Loki tries to tell Odin and the other Asgardians what he's figured out, they don't believe him. To prove a point, he commits suicide, and ends up in Hela's realm of the dead, and the Asgardians end up having to fight against the Celestials and their attack on Earth. Up next, number 8, Earth 807128. This Loki appears in the Old Man Logan universe, and as far as Loki alternates go, he's the most unimpressive Loki on this list. He's a giant skeleton. Now in the past, this Loki was giant sized, as his skeleton would suggest, and he was killed when the Baxter building was dropped on top of him. All that remains is his giant old skeleton, but apparently he put up quite the fight. The Baxter building is a fictional office building in the Marvel Universe that's located in Manhattan, and is 35 stories high, with its 5 upper floors being the home of the Fantastic Four. Loki's skeleton appears in Wolverine Volume 3, Issue 69, Part 4 of the Old Man Logan arc. In our next spot, at 7, Earth 90251. This Loki is first seen in What If? Secret Wars Volume 1, Issue 1. This What If ponders what if Dr. Doom hadn't failed in his attempt during Secret Wars and had managed to keep his newfound godhood. What's Loki's deal in this? The character takes on Dr. Doom alongside all of the other Asgardians, but is ultimately defeated. This issue is actually a neat little take on the What If titles, mimicking DC's iconic Watchmen with its narrative style, specifically borrowing from Dr. Manhattan's origin story that plays out as the character is on Mars. Except in this issue, the story of Dr. Doom and his godhood is told on the moon. Other homages to Watchmen also appear in the issue, including a television reporter announcing, "Yes, God exists and he's Latverian." Cute. And at 6, Earth 8107. This version of Loki is the one that appeared in the television show Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
This season 1 episode 10 appearance aired back in 1981 and featured Spider-Man alongside Thor and his spider friends, Iceman and Firestar, facing off against Loki. The episode begins with Spidey and his crew alongside Thor helping the government out with saving a sinking ocean liner in the North Pole. During the rescue mission, they happen upon a frozen Viking ship, which contains 2 neat little gems called the Twins of the Gods. Loki gets whiff of this and decides he wants them for himself. Upon getting them, he banishes Thor and Iceman, and traps Spidey and Firestar inside the gems themselves. And from there, as any good villain does in the Marvel Universe, he decides to wreak havoc on New York City. Eventually they all return, fight Loki in New York, and Thor banishes his half-brother to Asgard for punishment. Good, wholesome fun. And at number 5, the MCU Loki. Everybody adores the MCU Loki. Do I really need to elaborate any further? Tom Hiddleston's Loki has proven to be one of the most dynamic villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to date. He was the first major villain as far as the Avengers were concerned, bringing the original 6 together in one of the biggest franchise payoffs ever. Then, he turned good, but then went back to bad. And then returned to good once more, being one of the most enjoyable parts of Thor's 3rd solo title movie, Ragnarok. The MCU Loki is equal parts baddie as he is entertaining, witty, and one hell of a good time to watch. Moving on to number 4, Earth 6109. This Loki first appears in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is also, funny enough, his last appearance on this Earth too. He forms a group of supervillains alongside Ultron, Dr. Doom, Enchantress, and Baron Mordo, called the Masters of Evil. Real creative. They robbed S.H.I.E.L.D., taking the super soldier serum and mutant amplifier in order to create an army of super soldiers. Loki decides he wants to use this army along with some frost giants to conquer Asgard. He captures a bunch of Asgardians and imprisons them and makes himself king. Meanwhile, Dr. Doom decides he wants to steal the Odin Force and become a god. Something that doesn't really bode all that well with Loki. And after the trickster god is defeated by a team of superheroes, he ends up facing off against Doom. The general public believes him to be dead, but really he's just being punished alongside Dr. Doom by Odin for his treachery. Up next at 3, Ultimates Loki from Earth 1610. In the Ultimates universe, Loki is the son of Odin and a female giant who had procreated in an attempt to keep peace between Asgard and Jotunheim. When he grew up, he would participate in the war against the Frost Giants alongside his half-brothers Thor and Balder, forming the Warriors 3. After the war, he would defeat Thor in a tournament, trying to make his brother understand how everything had changed concerning him knowing his lineage. Loki would then go visit his mother, whom Odin had now imprisoned, and she sent him out on a quest to bring her the Norn Stones, which were the sacred relics that acted as an extension of Odin's power. Upon stealing them, Loki then killed Balder and was thus banished from Asgard. Flash forward to 1939. This Loki was on Earth and acted under the villain alias Baron Zemo, working with the Nazis as Zemo does in the regular Earth and like all the other ones too. For the most part. He used his power to wage war on Asgard, killed Heimdall, but was eventually stopped by Odin and banished to the room without doors. He would later conspire to destroy the Ultimates and start World War III, all while operating under a different persona called Gunnar Golem. And at number 2, Lady Sif. Loki in the comics is known for his fluid sexuality and gender fluidity. Well, among other things too. Taking over the physical persona of Lady Sif, Loki became a woman, a powerful goddess who was cunning as f***. Rather than transforming into Sif, he took over her body, something that added insult to injury to his brother Thor, considering she's his ex. Meaning yes, he was inside a body that his brother was also inside, but in a very different way. This happened in the comics after a Ragnarok, with Loki returning in the body of Sif and fooling all the other Asgardians into believing that he was trustworthy. Meanwhile, Loki's plan was to travel back in time to kill Odin's father, Bor, amongst other manipulative acts. A fan favorite, Loki's time as Sif is definitely one of his most sinister, and a time in which the character has been at his trickster prime. And finally, in at number 1, Kid Loki. Many a fan out there adore Kid Loki. On Earth 616, after Loki's actions led to the destruction of Asgard and he later died fighting alongside the Avengers to make up for it, this happened. He had his name removed from Hela's book, meaning he couldn't die, and thus he was reborn. Enter Kid Loki, an innocent young boy who Thor manages to find in Paris, who has no recollection of what the original Loki did, except horrible nightmares. Thor restores part of his memory and brings him back to Asgard, where he suffers an onslaught of bullying, since people remember him for the atrocities and crimes that he committed. But the trickster god ends up fighting for good. Well, for a while. Turns out he develops a new hatred for Thor, and the cycle begins again.
Number 10. Scarlet Witch. So many of us like to see the Scarlet Witch as this misunderstood magic user that is just looking for love. Well, she used to be one of the original members of the Brotherhood of Evil. She was teamed up with Magneto right from the start, and for years she thought her powers were only mutant powers. I mean, it made sense her brother Quicksilver was a mutant and the two of them were both working for Magneto. He was a mutant and everybody they were fighting was also a mutant. But after Scarlet Witch and her brother decided to part ways from the Brotherhood, they would decide that they needed to start using their powers for good and join the Avengers. It's wild how in comic books you can go from domestic terrorist to hero like that fast. It's incredible. But even after Scarlet Witch would decide to be a hero, it wouldn't be the last time she would do something to hinder nearly every hero in the world. And of course I'm referring to the infamous M-Day would have Scarlet Witch use her powers to rewrite reality and see it to that the mutants are nearly extinct. This was partly caused by her relationship with Magneto, who's her dad, and a very not great dad, I can also say. And before we go to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video because it does go a long way for our channel. Helps us out quite a bit. You guys are the best. Now back to some Avengers who used to be villains. Number 9, Wonder Man. It's hard to know in the Marvel Universe when you're being tricked because everyone has got a plan up their sleeve, even the good guys. But if you're working with a tactical Baron von Zemo, then you better believe that he's doing something dirty behind the scenes. See, Wonder Man used to just be a regular working class man. Actually, his story is nearly identical to that of the Vulture in the MCU. He's a working man. Stark puts him out of the business and then he has to do whatever he can to try and make ends meet. So eventually he's given the option to use advanced tech to get back at the people who wronged him, and he loves the idea of that. I mean, I'm kind of on board with that too, let's do it. That opportunity would come back when Baron von Zemo would approach him with a proposition. He would give Wonder Man, who was then just Simon Williams, the power of ionic energy so he could have the power to crush Iron Man. But partway through, his anger faded and he decided that taking on Iron Man wasn't the answer after all. So the two of them turned on Baron von Zemo. But here's the catch. The Baron isn't going to get caught with his pants down. He had Poison Williams, who would soon die after. So his hero life was short-lived because once you die in comics, you are dead forever. Moment of silence. Only for a bit, because he came back later on. Yeah, he came back. He was brought from the dead and is now a registered member of the Avengers. So, welcome back. Number 8, The Winter Soldier. You should know the story of the Winter Soldier by now. If you have not seen that movie yet, please go check it out because it's arguably the best movie in the MCU. And the story of the Winter Soldier has more flip-flops than a beach in Florida. The Winter Soldier was formerly Bucky Barnes, the best friend and right-hand man of Captain America. A tragic accident would have him fall to his death, or so Steve Rogers thought. It turns out Hydra got a hold of him and used some experimental tech to not only give him one of the most badass robotic arms that I've ever seen, but they also brainwashed him to be a living weapon. They used his advanced war training and then embedded him with Hydra assassination techniques. He was then frozen over and over again, only to be thawed out when Hydra needed to send him out to kill somebody. But eventually he would cross paths with Steve Rogers and the old memories would come flooding back to him. He would fight back against his Hydra programming and turn to become a good guy, even if he had to fight Iron Man to do it. Number 7, Hawkeye. Man, to think that one of the main members of the MCU used to be a bad guy, I mean, like, it's not that hard to believe now, but when you see him break down in Avengers Endgame and start chasing down gangs in Tokyo, then it all starts to make sense how this guy can have a dark side. But the first couple of times that we see Hawkeye show up, he was working with Black Widow, someone who actually we'll be mentioning later on this list. She would get him to tag along on missions where the two of them had to take down the flying tin can man known as Iron Man. But there wasn't enough hate in Hawkeye's heart to keep him on the dark side, and he eventually swapped over to work with the heroes, and since then, he hasn't looked back. Number 6, Loki. Now, never an official member of the Avengers, I mean, he didn't stand with them when every hero in the MCU teamed up to storm Thanos' army and save the universe, but he did some of the most heroic acts that set everything up so the Avengers could save the day. He summoned Surtur so that he could take out Hela. He teamed up with Thor to save the people of Asgard, and he even threw his life on the line to try and kill Thanos. The guy's time as a hero is pretty short-lived, but he did come through when it counted, and I think the Avengers will look back at him as one of the most heroic members of them all. Just saying. Number 5, Red Hulk. I really love the Hulk's villains. I mean, you have the leader, which kind of represents the opposite of the Hulk, all brains with very little brawn. But then so many of his other villains are just like him, but slightly different, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Let's just get 2 cannonballs and fire them at each other and see what happens. Boom. The results are usually pretty explosive. Well, if you didn't know, Red Hulk is the general who always wanted the Hulk dead. Thaddeus Ross. I guess he went down the if you can't beat him, join him line, thinking that when it came to taking out the big green beast, he was actually able to keep his identity a secret, but once it was finally revealed who he was, it would be Captain America that would team up with him. With the two of them having a military background, it kind of made sense. It also made sense for the Red Hulk to become a hero. I mean, Thaddeus wasn't that far off in his quest to stop the Hulk, even though the big green beast is a force for good most of the time. He would be seen as a threat to everybody else around him. And Thaddeus seemed to have better control over his version of the Hulk than Bruce ever did. Number 4, Namor. It doesn't matter what comic book universe you're in, you gotta have a fish dude. That's just a staple of how everything works, that's it. And for the Marvel Universe, we of course have Namor. The Submariner, he was actually one of the original villains in Marvel. The dude's pretty old, with his first comic coming out in 1939. He's the ruler of Atlantis, and he didn't like the way things were handled on the surface, so he decided to duke it out with the people walking on land. Turns out that he wasn't a match for the people on the surface, so he decided to join them. He would eventually team up with the Avengers, but even though he was now fighting side by side with them, he's always had a superiority complex when it comes to dealing with surface-dwelling super people. And even though the Avengers saw him as an ally, when push came to shove, he would ditch them and team with the X-Men to try and take down the Avengers. He even flooded Wakanda, which seems like a bit of an overreaction. He's always had a sore spot when it comes to the Black Panther. I think maybe it's because he hates seeing a surface civilian as advanced as Atlanteans. Could be. Number 3, Vision. Even though the MCU will have you thinking that Vision was made by the Avengers to take out Ultron, it was really the other way around. Hank Pym's least favorite kid would make the android as a tool to take out the Avengers. I guess he didn't feel like getting his hands dirty that day. Okay. Well, he should have done a better job at programming the damn thing, because while fighting the Avengers, Vision decides to swap sides and teaming up with the good guys, which in the end seems to be the worst possible thing that could happen for Ultron. You build something to kill the Avengers, but then it turns on you, and then the Avengers are now stronger, but then all the secrets that this machine knows about you will be leaked to them. But now Vision has become one of the most famous members of the Avengers, with him and Wanda starring in the new WandaVision TV show on Disney+. And don't worry if you haven't gotten around to watching that yet. I'm not going to ruin anything for you, but you definitely should go and watch it right now. We're only 3 episodes in, so you got time to catch up before it ends. Plenty of time. Number 2, Black Widow. I mean, her name is Black Widow, so I mean, that's not usually how heroes are named unless they're an anti-hero, like the Punisher, you know? It should be no surprise that she's super sneaky, and she actually used to be one of Iron Man's greatest villains. The Black Widow started out as an agent sent over from Russia to bring down one of the founding members of the Avengers. It's kind of weird to think that in Marvel universes that would be developed down the line, she would be one of the founding members. It's awesome. But the villain was just so popular that nobody wanted to see her go. And after the Cold War ended, the story of a Russian agent that was sent over to dismantle a part of America that everybody loved just wasn't as compelling as it once was. And number 1, Doctor Doom. Now I know this is only for a limited time, but it's still so wild that it deserves a spot on this list, a very high spot on this list. We're talking about the same Doctor Doom that once was ruling Battleworld, the same Doctor Doom that stole Odin's powers, the same guy. He's one of the biggest, baddest villains that gives Thanos a run for his money with the amount of schemes that he's pulled. Well, there was a time when Victor Von Doom suffered a pretty serious blow to the head, an injury that would take out most people, but we're not talking about most people, are we? Valeria came through to fix up Doom's brain, and not long after that, he was working with the good guys. Right around this time, Tony was in a deep coma, so someone needs to step in the role of Iron Man, and who better than Doctor Doom himself? Having Doom become Iron Man for that brief moment was one of the coolest moments ever, hands down. Kicking off the list at number 10, Kang the Conqueror. Also known as Nathaniel Richards, Kang the Conqueror is actually already cast in the live-action MCU, with Jonathan Majors set to play him in Ant-Man 3. But who is Kang? Why is this such a big deal? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on pretty much any superhero. He's insanely smart, and of course he travels with armies, hence the toughness behind him. Now these armies are built in a similar fashion sense, each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry. The time travel stuff doesn't come without consequence though, as Kang travels more and more through time. He creates time-displaced duplicates. And as we saw in Avengers Endgame, it can be quite tricky to figure out how to fix time. I think this is the perfect time to introduce a time-hopping villain, especially for Ant-Man, who's now a big-time Avenger, who's been around the quantum block a few times. What do you guys think Kang's goal is going to be in Ant-Man 3? Do you think he's going to clean up these timelines, or do you think he's just pissed off and now he wants to just attack anybody who's messed with the quantum realm? Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We love hearing your feedback as well. And before we head on over to number 9, if you guys could go ahead and give us a thumbs up on this video, that would help out a lot at the studio. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. And let's keep on going with this list. Number 9, the Magus. Making his comic book debut in New Mutants issue 18, the Magus is a powerful enemy of Adam Warlock. He travels alongside Thanos in Guardians of the Galaxy comic books, and in one of the many after-credit scenes for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Adam Warlock's name was briefly mentioned. Now this is important because the Magus is actually an enemy of Adam Warlock. He's a tyrant and a god, and now he appears as a ghostly form because, well, he's an evil version of Adam Warlock from the future. Crazy. So Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave when they were trying to create these perfect invincible beings. They created Adam, and we see this in one of those after credit scenes where she goes, "I shall name him Adam." And then everyone in the theater knows what's coming, they know what's coming up. It was exciting, it was a big moment. So Adam, during his travels, runs into the oppressive Universal Church of Truth and their god being the Magus. He was then shocked to see that the Magus is a dark, twisted version of himself, obsessed with the Infinity Stones, much like Thanos' desire. So could we see Adam come out of his glowing birthing pod and stir up some more Infinity Gem madness in the MCU? Yes, let's hope so. I think if the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 wasn't delayed or pushed on to later, we would have seen this already in motion, maybe in WandaVision. Number 8. Taskmaster. He's the big bad villain coming with the Black Widow movie, which we're still eagerly awaiting for. But just who is this hooded, shadowy fighter from the trailers? Taskmaster made his comic book debut back in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters, he is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who who turned into a mercenary and assassin. And his whole thing that makes him special is that he can replicate your physical skills. He has this photographic reflex memory. So we can watch a video of Black Widow take down some evil henchmen and then bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows that choreography. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains, agents, henchmen, and even some heroes. He learned how to twirl a lasso by watching cowboys on TV, and he learned how to play basketball by watching the NBA. He's kind of amazing. And he chose to be a villain instead of being an NBA superstar. What a clown. He's quite impressive. I mean, most Hydra agents, AIM troopers, Hellfire, Club Enforcers, and other big bad groups, they all most likely graduated from the Taskmaster Academy for henchmen. And I'm super excited to see him in action in Black Widow. I'll gladly wait longer and longer and longer just so I can see him in IMAX hucking a shield. It's gonna be so worth the wait. Mwah. Number 7, Scarlet Witch. No more mutants. The 3 words that changed everything. So Scarlet Witch, okay, we're all counting down the days until the next episode of WandaVision because now it's cooking. Because now we can finally see an evil Wanda Maximoff. More evil than when she was in Ultron. That didn't really, we don't count that. She's the daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, aka Pietro Maximoff. Now, she was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but at one point she did, of course, join the Avengers. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during the events of M-Day, she spoke those 3 words, and just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered or killed. So after she said those 3 words, that large number that ended up being affected was somewhere around 986,000 people, only leaving a couple hundred mutants left. Now, with the last 2 episodes of WandaVision sneaking up, it's more than likely that we'll see Wanda lean into this villain part. I mean, she's already expanded the Hex to a much, much larger scale, and now everybody's trapped prepping for the circus, eating swords, talking to the camera, the whole sitcom life, living up the hashtag sitcom life, you know? Tyler Hayward at one point in a previous episode asks if Wanda has a Avengers alias, but they make it very clear that she doesn't. This is almost to remind the audience that she hasn't got a cool nickname yet. So when the name the Scarlet Witch comes in, that'll be a big deal because that'll be her being marked as a villain with the name Scarlet Witch. With this whole Agatha Harkness witch stuff coming into play, I think we're very close to seeing Wanda flip to the dark side. At least for a little bit until Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes out, and then they have to make her not evil and help out and stuff. It's gonna be a whole thing. This is just a start. Number 6, Morgan Le Fay. Medieval witches and alternate timelines. I mean, that should say enough right there. She made her first appearance in the Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955. And Morgan Le Fay is based off of the Arthurian legend, so she's got a little bit of King Arthur, a little bit of evil magic, and 100% reason to remember the name. She's tried to rule the world many times, specifically after the events of Onslaught, where the Avengers go to an alternate Earth, and when they get back in Heroes Reborn, The Return, we have this new world filled with mythical creatures, of course being ran by Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, she got her hands on the Norn Stones and then made Scarlet Witch add her magic to the fun mix as well. So maybe we'll see that come to play as well. We got a lot of playing room with Scarlet Witch and witchcraft and all that magical stuff. It's gonna be crazy. Number 5, the Kree Skrull Empire. They made their comic debut in Fantastic Four issue 2 back in 1962. A lot of 2s in there. And they made their Marvel Cinematic debut only a couple years ago in Captain Marvel. But who are the Skrulls? Well, they're a race of shapeshifters from the Andromeda Galaxy, and they look like green humans almost, except much more powerful and ferocious. They lived on the homeworld of Skrullos in the Drock system, and I loved watching these guys in Captain Marvel. They were a lot of fun, and it was nice to see them actually not be the main villain in the movie. Usually we have these evil gods or these crazy insane robots, but to see the villains of that movie end up wanting just the same chances of survival as humans made it more touchy, more emotional. You know, they're carrying around kids, just looking after their own. Like, it's nice. It was a nice change of pace. Even for a fake out, it was still rewarding. It was still fun. So yeah, they're expert shapeshifters. They can transform into anything, organic or non-organic, as long as it's solid. They can't adapt to superpowers unless you're a Super Skrull, which, I mean, those guys you don't want to play around with. The Kree Skrull War is amongst one of the biggest threats to the Avengers because they both believe that the Earth is theirs to claim. See, the Kree performed experiments on humans millennia ago, and then they actually caused the creation of Inhumans. And the Skrulls just see Earth as their new homeworld since theirs was destroyed by Galactus. So a good comic to check out with them would be the 1974 storyline, The Kree Skrull War by Roy Thomas. Avengers 89 to 97. Number 4, Dr. Doom. Making his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 5, Victor Von Doom likes to go head-to-head with the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He's one of the most popular Marvel villains ever, and he's not easy to forget. Just by looking at him, he's one of the coolest guys, I think. He thinks he's right. He thinks that he'll actually do a good job ruling the world. I mean, he's so smart, maybe he's correct, maybe he could do it, but he's kind of evil, so we don't want to see it get to that point. He is the ruler of the land Latveria, and he really cares about this place in Fantastic Four 246. We see this compassion come to play in full force. So why the taste for ruling? Where did this all start, right? Well, each supervillain has their own path, and for Victor, that path started turning to the dark side before he was even born. You see, his mother was a Latvian woman, and she liked to get close to demons. I mean, perhaps a little too close. And after Victor was born, she would attempt to tap into these demonic powers herself, and her clan didn't like that, so they took her out. Sad stuff. So him and his dad were like, okay, see ya, this place sucks, we're out of here. Sadly, during this escape, his dad ended up freezing, and then he had to go on by himself as just a young boy. Then he figured he'd try this demonic power tapping himself later on in life, and then with no luck, he turned to his brain power, and then he soon met Reed Richards when he was in school. So that sad origin plus the college hazing, I mean, this is a villain backstory in the making. Number 3, Loki. Arguably one of the finest characters of the MCU, Loki is the adoptive son of Odin, but who are his real parents? Who is he? What is he doing? Why is he like this? Well, Loki was left as a baby. He was abandoned in his homeworld of Jotunheim, and during a battle, Odin had found this lost child and took him on as his own. What a sweet man, what a sweet gentle giant. So we see this play out in the first Thor movie back in 2011. And then when Loki finds out his motives are peddled by being the offspring of an evil frost giant, he gets a little upset, naturally. He always felt different growing up and often looked down on Thor as he got the most attention and love. Must have been those curly blonde waves. I mean, come on. Odin had chosen not to tell Loki about his true heritage, and he raised him as one of his own. And he's the villain that we love to hate. I'm honestly super excited to see the God of Mischief hop around time in the Loki show coming up. We can't get enough Tom Hiddleston as this role, and I'll happily wait week after week to see him cause more MCU mischief. Happily. Number 2, Ultron. In the MCU, Tony and Bruce are the masterminds behind Ultron. But in the comics, it was actually Hank Pym. Ultron made his first debut back in 1968 in Avengers 54, and beneath the Crimson Cowl, we discover that he is indeed Ultron Pym. See, in the comics, Hank Pym was actually the father of Ultron. There are many versions of Ultron, seeing as he constantly wants to upgrade himself to be bigger and badder. He actually has the same brain patterns as Hank Pym, so he figured it needed a personality, much like our MCU version of Ultron is basically Tony Stark, but with jealousy issues and a lot more metal. A good example of his ruling comes from the Age of Ultron from 2013. Like right off the bat, we can see a dark, life-drained world, and Spider-Man wakes up like, what'd I miss? Ultron is attacking from the future. That's how ahead of the game he is in this comic. And I can't lie, I was really excited for the Age of Ultron movie in the MCU. Like the trailer made him seem so dark and ominous. Even his voice was badass. And then in the movie, he just sounds like normal James Spader, and he just walks around talking about omelets. There's rumors that he'll return for WandaVision, but I mean, maybe it's best to leave him in 2015, at least for a bit longer. And finally, number 1, Thanos. You know who this guy is, come on. We first saw him in the after credit scene of Avengers 1 and 2, and then we saw him sitting down in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we saw him snap away half of all life in the universe in Avengers Infinity War. The Mad Titan first made his comic book debut back in Iron Man issue 55, and funny enough, Robert Downey Jr. is 55 years old, so just a coincidence, literally just a coincidence. So we all know how powerful Thanos is with the Infinity Gauntlet, but if you still haven't seen the movie, I'll touch briefly on those. But look, without the Gauntlet, Thanos is still a villain you don't want to mess around with. He is still a Mad Titan. He was born on the Saturn moon Titan, both of his parents were Eternals, and due to the genetic disorder known as the Deviant Syndrome, his mother actually tried to take him out at first sight. So he's got a pretty dark history already. He got payback when he took out his entire family just to impress Death. And then in the opening of Avengers Infinity War, we see Thanos level the Hulk without even using a single stone. That's how strong this guy is. He just, right in the neck, you're done. But then once he gets the 6 Infinity Stones, he has control over each cosmic power. Those of course being soul, time, power, reality, space, and mind. Now after he snapped his fingers and half of all life disappeared, in the comics he does this to get the attention of Death. But in the movie he does so to be a savior, because you know, too many mouths to feed, not enough to go around. I mean, you could just snap some Cinnamon Toast Crunch into everybody's home. That would be a great start, Thanos. Just an idea. Number 10, rejected at birth. Before the monologues and ruling, Loki was just a kid born into royalty. He made his first comic book appearance in Venus issue 6, and in the Silver Age he entered with Journey into Mystery issue 85. His father was King Lafay, leader of the giants of Jotunheim, and Loki was born not a frost giant, but rather he was pretty petite. He was small and frail, so much so that his parents were actually kind of embarrassed to call him family. He wasn't even allowed to play with the other giants. Poor Loki, from birth he's had a rough go. But it only gets worse. Number 9, his true origins. It's gotta be a tough time to find out your parents aren't even your real parents. It happens quite often in these comics, but Loki was raised in the Odinson household, and he felt like he belonged there at least. Well, mostly. I mean, sure, Thor was the favorite brother and all, but he truly thought Odin and Frigga were his parents, so when Loki came into contact with the Casket of Ancient Winters, he actually thought he was cursed. Now, the Casket of Ancient Winters was safely stored in Odin's vault at this time, and we see it for the first time in the comics in Thor issue 346. And it made it to the big screen in 2011 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So the Casket of Ancient Winters is a relic that doubled down as a deadly weapon, belonging originally to the Frost Giants. So Loki felt this without even knowing his true heritage, and he still felt this power, and it has the ability to unleash the fury of 1,000 killing winters. So you open this thing and it's trouble. You better be ready for quite a rush. It took all of Heimdall's strength to just break through this ice when Loki used it against him later on in Thor 1. Coming from a guy who lives in Canada, it doesn't look too bad. Wear some layers, grab a coffee, you'll be fine. And before we continue on with this Loki list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, it looks just like that, maybe a little less nice. That would be great for our studio. It really does help us out quite a bit, especially while we're working from home for this last little chunk. It really does go a long way for us. So thank you so much for your patience and support. Let's get right back into this video. Number 8, stuck in a tree. Now I know that doesn't sound very frightening off the bat, but when it comes to Asgardian magic, this can be quite daunting. In Journey into Mystery issue 85, the first time we see Loki on the pages, before he even gets up to anything crazy in the comics, he was condemned by the gods to be trapped in a tree. In a tree! He's to remain there until somebody sheds a tear for him. Now, Loki, obviously, no one's gonna be crying over him. He was kind of the worst, but someone did cry. Someone did shed one tear for Loki. Might be a little bit different than you think. So he's been in this tree for ages now, but slowly and surely he's able to control the tree. And I don't mean like the trees from Wizard of Oz either, like not gonna huck apples at Odin. He can just manipulate the tree in small ways. So when Heimdall's passing that tree, he commands the tree to shed a leaf, and the timing was so perfect. The leaf just fell and then poked him right in his eye, causing, of course, a tear to fall after. And voila, we see Loki emerge from this tree and just run for it, just run for the hills. And his first plan of attack was to seek revenge on the one responsible for his tree time, Brother Thor. Number 7, Hulk smashed. When Loki tried to tame the Hulk in the first Avengers movie, he got ragdoll into cement in the Avengers Tower. It was kind of a funny moment for theaters, especially that little squeak that Tom Hiddleston lets out when he's lying there. It's so funny, it's great. Well, according to E. Paul Zare, who has a PhD in neuroscience, and Dr. Kirk McGee from the QEII Health Sciences Center, Loki would have been kind of screwed. He would have been in a lot of pain here. Due to the whip-like actions of the Hulk swinging him, Loki would apparently have a crushed skull, fractured vertebrae from the cervical or neck region all the way down to the lower back, broken ribs, dislocated hips, crushed tibia and fibula, and crushed metatarsal ankle bones. Loki would also suffer internal damage as well, like punctured lungs, a ruptured septum in the heart, a lacerated liver, ruptured spleen, kidney damage, and a ruptured bladder. Now, I get that he's part of the whole God Squad, but he's got to feel at least a few of these. And we have proof that he did feel those, because in Thor Ragnarok, when Thor gets ragdolled in a similar fashion, Loki gets up excitedly and says, "That's how it feels." So you can tell he's been thinking about this a bit. Number 6, solitary confinement. So after the events of the original Avengers movie, when Loki didn't steal the Cosmic Cube and break the timeline, he was actually sent back up to Asgard to do some time. Now, in usual fashion, he attended a hearing where he was sentenced to life in the Asgardian dungeons. Now, the only reason he was still alive in the first place is actually because of his mother, his adoptive mother, Frigga. The trial was nuts. Loki got absolutely blasted. He was roasted. He was told his birthright was to die as a child, cast out on a frozen rock. So when he got cozy in confinement, his mother came in to say some last words to the fallen son. She was calm. She shared concern about his holding cell. It was a beautiful moment where you could tell Loki wasn't so evil after all. He wasn't manipulated from the Cosmic Cube anymore. He cared for his mother through all of this, and when he went out to touch her hand one last time, it ended up just being magic. She wasn't actually there. Now, funny enough, in a deleted scene, this moment is even more heartbreaking. The scene showed the two talking as they did in the final cut of Thor: The Dark World, but Frigga told Loki that a true king admits his faults. And then Loki responds with, "Well, Odin's not my real father, so you're not my real mother." Number 5, cursed advice. Algrim the Strong was a lieutenant of the Dark Elves leader Malekith, and he was serving his master Malekith, you know, the MCU's best villain, Malekith, him. Algrim was locked up with Loki at the same time in those dungeons. He actually sacrificed his life to become the last of the cursed. Much like Loki in Avengers 1, he too got locked up with bigger intentions. So once he transformed using the Curse Stone and he punched his way out of the dungeons, he debated setting Loki free, but again, he was frail and small, so he's like, no. Walking away, Loki tipped him off to the best escape route to the Asgardian shield generator. And after Curse demolishes that, the other Dark Elves were able to invade Asgard, and then Curse met up with Malekith, and after failing to retrieve the Aether, Curse stabbed Frigga in the back with her own sword. To think Loki helped this guy out, that's crazy. He's like, hey, try those stairs, you get there faster. And then now his mom's dead. Way to go, Loki. This was after he chose not to free Loki as well, so Loki just gave the advice just cuz. Number 4, eaten by his father. Yeah, this one's, oof. In War of the Realms, the Dark Elf Malekith returns from imprisonment, starts a war in his homeworld of Svartalheim, and was crowned a king. The next step was to assemble the League of Allies from across the 10 realms, forming the Dark Council. Now among those was King Laufey and Loki. Now a family discussion breaks out. Laufey confesses to Loki that he's the worst thing to ever come from his loins. Nice use of the word loins there, good stuff. And he referred to him as his one great shame. As if the roast wasn't hard enough, he proceeds to eat Loki with a very loud crunch to go along with the visuals. Yum. Number 3, beaten to death. In the 2004 Loki series, it picks up with Loki claiming leadership of Asgard. It's a dream come true this time around. He has the throne officially, but the throne life isn't what he expected, really. Those who helped Loki become a king now want him to continue and fulfill his promises. So Loki would now go to his prisoners, Thor and Lady Sif, for some ruling advice, you know, one of those. It's like when somebody becomes manager and they don't know how to manage, so they're like, how do I do this? And you're like, I'm making $12, man, I don't know, you gotta figure this one out. After some events, it's decided that Thor will be beheaded the next day at dawn. But in typical Loki fashion, he went against fate and opted not to follow through last minute. He spared his brother and freed him, but Hela was actually revealed to be another version of Loki, just used as an illusion to get Thor killed. So when Thor was free, he was like, you know what, I'm just gonna finish this myself. And he beat Loki to death. It was brutal. Number 2, killed by Thanos. Yeah, we gotta mention this one. I'd say it's a pretty bad day. The final scenes of Thor Ragnarok, we find Thor and Loki aboard the new ship, the new Asgard, after the old one got blown to smithereens. Loki looks at Thor and tells him how much he reminds him of Odin. It's a very sweet moment between the brothers. Finally, they're close and they're ready to do some good. Then all of a sudden, this big ship approaches and audience knew who it was right off the bat. Loki met his fate before the title card even appeared in Avengers Infinity War. He tried to go out like a hero and he put his tricks to use, but Thanos saw it coming. And the crack we hear in Loki's neck is, I still hear it in my head. No resurrections this time, Thanos says, before dropping his lifeless blue body on the floor of the ship. But right before Loki gets the chokey, he does say something to Thor that stuck with him and fans. He assures them that the sun will shine on them again. So I'm hoping that Loki comes out of this alive somehow. I think the Disney show is gonna bring him back in a way like they did with Vision. It's possible. And finally, number 1, TVA trouble. Loki is quick on his feet. Even when he was in the midst of being detained after Avengers 1, he still got his hands on the Tesseract for 2 seconds in Endgame, and poof, now he was gone, disrupting all these timelines. Now this probably felt good in the moment. He's like, yes, the Cosmic Cube, here we go, time to make a getaway. But luckily for us, the Time Variance Authority was waiting for him. He gets arrested by them, his clothes get ripped off, he is now a prisoner of the TVA. Now the TVA is the Time Variance Authority. It's an organization that protects timelines, and Owen Wilson is his character named Agent Mobius, and he explains to Loki that they need him to restore the timelines. Now this is going to be a fun series. I've actually been looking forward to this, I think the most since all of these shows were announced, right beside WandaVision. I'm like, it's going to be good. The fact that this is 2012 Loki again is just the icing on the timeline cake. I'm excited to see more of this character arc on screen because we missed like 4 years from when he became a king at the end of Thor 2, and then we cut to Thor Ragnarok and it was like a comedy buddy cop movie. Like I want to see that dark stuff in between. I want to see that dark Loki still. I want to see more monologues, more Mewling Quim comments, that kind of stuff. Now he's gonna be DB Cooper? Let's go, sign me up. Number 10, his origins. Of course, we have to start at the beginning. Ultimate Loki entered the chat in Ultimates 2, issue 1. He is the son of Odin and Farbadi. He was born basically as a peace settlement between Asgard and Jotunheim. So Loki, half-brother Thor, and Balder were the original Warriors 3 here. So Loki would battle these frost giants, they fought in the 1,000-Year War, and finally the Asgardians were deemed the victors. So the 3 of them now entered this tournament with other Asgardians Asgardian warriors, and that's where he was defeated by his brother Thor for the first time. Number 9, a message. So while the brothers were fighting, Loki was warning Thor at the same time. You know, the usual monologue while we're fighting. Now, as the battles begin, Loki strikes Thor, and Thor gets a little excited. He's like, oh, that's how we're gonna be, brother, let's do it. Or whatever, you know, they sound like. I'm not man enough to do the He's like, okay, that's how it's gonna be, I see, let's do it. So while they're fighting, Loki begins to warn Thor of what's gonna come after their victories. He tells Thor that they're getting ready to enter very dangerous times, and Thor is confused. He's like, I'm sorry, I thought we just beat everybody. That's why we're celebrating, no? And that's the whole point of this. It's over, we won. Now Loki agrees, but in doing so, this victory, it ended a stalemate that existed for 1,000 years. Now during war, they know who they were. Now that it's over, now what? Who are these guys? What do they have to do now? Now everything changes. Balder comes in after beating those other guys, and he and Thor kept battling, both pretty much ignoring Loki and his warning. Classic. Thor pulls his hammer out to light the place up whilst presenting the victor of the battle, Balder. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It's really helpful for us on our channel. You guys are the best. Thank you for your support. Let's get right back to this video. Number 8, he killed Balder. Spoiler warning, let's do it now while we're at it. So the Warriors 3, they didn't last long after this, because when Loki went to go visit his mother, who was now a prisoner of Odin, she asked him for a favor. She asked Loki to bring her the Norn stones, which contains Odin's power, much like the hammer. So while Loki was stealing those stones, he had to do something pretty dark and terrible. He fired an arrow through the helmet of Heimdall, and yes, the helmet was on his head. So just like that, bam, it was one shot, perfect aim, he nailed it. His favorite bow too, might I add. So Loki also had to take out his other half-brother Balder with his favorite bow. He just loves the bow thing, it's crazy. And that's of course when he was banished from Asgard, which makes sense. He should have been banished a little sooner, but that's fine. Better late than never. So while he was talking to Balder, he made him use his gifts and tell Loki what the future holds. Now Balder responds with, okay, Asgard is in ruins, your mother is dead for her betrayal, and you, Loki, you believe in nothing and you are lost. All salt and no spirit. Burn, that's a roast. There is no tomorrow with his chaos. And then Loki asks what Balder sees in his future before releasing that fateful arrow. Number 7, Baron Zemo. In 1939, supervillain Baron Zemo rose to take over Asgard. Well, it wasn't actually Baron Zemo, it was the Lord of Mischief himself, which you probably could have guessed. He planned an attack on Asgard and his backup was quite intimidating. He had German soldiers and frost giants ready to fight all under his command. Now after a quick Heimdall cocktail, all of these soldiers and giants were just amped up. The Norn stones mixed with Heimdall's blood, yup, it just empowered them. And just as he told Thor, trouble is indeed on its way. Chaos ensued, but luckily Odin stepped in and banished Loki to one of the worst rooms ever. The room without doors. How do we get out? How do we get in? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. So Loki apologizes before he disappears, and he says he's sorry. Sorry for nothing, that is. Oh, had him in the first half. You thought. Number 6, Ragnarok. So Loki was sent to the room without doors, but the gang wasn't out of the woods yet. We still have to deal with the giant army, duh. So Odin was then attacked by the leader of the frost giants, Mammon, and once Thor took care of that, he went to check in on his father, and as he was fading away, the world tree began to burn. And as Odin died, so did Asgard. So Thor was a little upset at this point, a little upset. So he went on a bit of a rampage, as he should. Now, what ended up happening here was because the Ultimate comic goes back and forth. Now, back then, before returning to Asgard, Loki had left those Norn stones with a young soldier named Helmet, and also instructions on what to do with them. So he's not like, cool, is that a sapphire? What is this gem? What are these gems? So cut to 60 years later, Thor is on Earth, Helmet opens this portal to the room without doors, and Loki is now free. Thing is, Loki was still a god when he went in. He hasn't gone anywhere, whereas Thor and Balder were reborn as mortal men. So now we got a problem. Number 5, Loki's return. So the god of mischief is back again, and he spent some time under house arrest, and following the failed Chitauri invasion, Loki teamed up with the Liberators in an attempt to take down the Ultimates, which sounds bad enough, but then he also had plans to start World War III. Because, you know, why not? In Ultimates issue 2, Loki used his reality-changing abilities and created the identity of Gunnar Goldman, member of the Norwegian Super Soldier program, and he used Thor's past life as Thorleif in order to make Thor seem like he's going insane. And it worked. Now he wasn't quite done there, however. See, Loki had also tried to frame Captain America for what happened to Clint's family. He was blending in as a leader, not using his powers, or else Odin would be able to find him. But I'll get into that a little later on. Now thankfully the Liberators weren't able to defeat the Ultimates, but Loki still wanted to try after failing this many times. So he attacked the Ultimates again, but the Scarlet Witch and her probability powers summoned Thor, so that didn't happen. Number 4, banished again. Okay, so Thor returns with the hammer this time. Loki is totally screwed, and Thor decides that it's probably best to finish the trickster off. But with Loki and his powers, it's evidently not an easy task, especially when Loki summons an army of Asgardian monsters. It's heated, and then Odin came down to bring the pain himself. Odin too sent some Guardian warriors and removed most of Loki's powers. So those hammer hits from Thor are going to start to leave a mark. So he reverted back to his old ways, and he tried to talk himself out of these situations. So he ranted about how he was jealous of Thor, how he wanted to see him finally go down. He even took a jab at us humans for some reason. He's like, look at these fools. They believed all these illusions. Look how stupid they are. They bought it. Meanwhile, I'm like, that's nice. That's really nice. So Thor does a trick of his own and sends Loki right back to Asgard to atone for his sins. But guess what? Number 3, he got out again. Get out of town. Loki? No way. How? Loki somehow got free from Odin and tried to take on Thor yet again, but this time with trolls as backup. He wanted to annoy Thor to a point where he would just go nuts, and then Thor would be the one to lose control and destroy Earth. Like I would do to my older brother all the time. I would bug him, then he'd swear, then I'd tell on him for swearing, and then he'd get grounded. Easy, right? You're welcome. Thing is, Loki ended up taking out Valkyrie, Thor's girlfriend, which never happened in our family, thank God. But this got heated, right? Where Hela had to get involved now. Hela brought Valkyrie back to life, this time as a real Valkyrie, and then she killed Loki. See ya, pal. He went straight to the underworld, straight to hell. But even there, he planned for yet another escape. You gotta respect the hustle, he doesn't quit. Number 2, powers and weaknesses. So we're gonna see many tricks from Loki in this Disney show, and in the Ultimates alone, Loki's abilities are quite impressive. To see a handful of these would just spoil us. He can shuffle space and time, as I mentioned before, but there's a lot to that. So any attacks against Loki are fixable because he can just alter his own godly strength to resist said injuries. He can make you talk to a person that's not even there, make you look absolutely insane, and with multiple copies of Loki, not only will you get a headache from all the monologues, but he's equally as strong as Thor with those numbers. His weaknesses come from his home life, of course. Odin can control quite a bit of this chaos. So if Loki uses all of his power, full capacity, Odin will be able to find him. It's like yelling really loud. They're like, why is he yelling? Oh, it's Loki. Get over here. During Ultimates 2, Thor mentions that Loki's powers had weakened, and it was unclear why at that point. But later on, comments from Loki implied that Odin was the reason behind this all along. And finally, number 1, his death. It's no surprise Loki escaped from hell afterwards when Asgard came to Earth, and during the attack of the Children of Tomorrow, Loki finally met his fate while battling alongside other Asgardians. But not Thor. See, Thor is now in Valhalla at this point. He got released, but he had to have a child with Hela first. So his hands were full. So Thor was able to see Loki's ghost as well as other Asgardians and his nephew, Modi, and you can find the last of Ultimate Loki in Ultimates Volume 2, Issue 2.
Number 10, Death Urge. Similar to how the DC Universe has the Black Flash acting as messenger of death, Marvel decided to dip their toes into that realm as well, and out came Death Urge, a wraith-like superhuman entity with the ability to fly at some ridiculous speeds, turn intangible, and of course, pull various weapons like spears and swords out of their body. When these weapons strike Death Urge's targets, they immediately die with a blackness spreading from the spot where the weapon struck and passed through the target's body. If the weapon happens to pass through someone other than Death Urge's target, that person only feels a numbing coldness but will not actually blacken or die. Death Urge's only targets are apparently only those who have craved death and oblivion to some degree, so I guess I better be on the lookout. Not a whole lot is known about Death Urge beside the fact that he once served Oblivion and had a very close relationship with Craig Hollis. In Hollis's earlier life, Death Urge acted as both a guardian angel and a bad influence for him, goading him into dangerous situations in an attempt to awaken him to his own immortality. However, this relationship was damaged beyond repair when Hollis's girlfriend killed herself and Death Urge arrived to collect her soul, with Hollis believing that Death Urge had goaded Terry to commit suicide and from then on viewed him as a tormentor. He has been seen up against not only the Avengers but the Fantastic Four as well, and each time he has caused some serious trouble, so it's kinda weird that he hasn't had too many appearances.
Number 9, Mole Man. Mole Man originally appeared in Fantastic Four issue number 1, but has become a villain to not just the FF over time, but the Avengers as well. In fact, despite not being one of the strongest villains around, the Avengers even at one point had to team up with the FF to defeat Mole Man, who had kidnapped Sue Storm. Mole Man became a villain because he felt that society had rejected him. He aimed to take revenge on the world for this. Mole Man has taken on more than one Avengers team as well, even having beef with not officially sanctioned West Coast Avengers, believing the team had attacked his home of Subterranea located beneath Monster Island. He is also tangled with Tony Stark's Mighty Avengers as well.
Number 8. Starstalker. Varanus aka Starstalker is a dragon-like alien monster from the planet Vormir. By wrapping himself in a cocoon, he was able to transform himself into a larger, more powerful form, known as his ionic combustion form. In this form, Varanus was able to absorb the ions of anything around him, allowing him to drain the energy of enemies such as Thor, or even shorting out Iron Man's armor. But that's not all, because he frequently used this power to gorge himself on entire planets, destroying them in the process. After attacking and defeating Krull, this monster caught the attention of the Avengers, and although he was able to hide from them for a short period of time, Mantis was eventually able to find him and the fight ensued. Starstalker was able to dispatch the Avengers pretty easily by taunting them with stories of his origins while refusing to reveal his weakness, before spinning himself into another ionic cocoon to boost his power to destroy the Earth. Eventually, Mantis was able to figure out that his weakness was solar energy, and her and Vision used this weakness to just turn him into stone.
Number 7. Red Ghost. The Red Ghost is also a Fantastic Four villain as well. He is a Russian communist who is known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers. As such, Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship and went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gained the ability to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost. Because, you know, he's a communist and he can be see-through. And he also became the leader of the Super Apes, because they also got powers. Later on, he would team up with Mole Man and ended up fighting the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank randomly with his team of Super Apes.
Number 6. Cyclop. No, not Cyclops, Cyclop. Also known as One Eye for, well, obvious reasons, Cyclop was a member of an ancient insect alien race that worshipped the Dark Gods, and because of this, Cyclop was eventually chosen by the Dark Gods to find a power source for them in exchange for his race getting to conquer Earth. He was quickly able to capture the Hulk, however the other members of the Avengers were able to defeat him relatively easily, and this resulted in Cyclop losing the Hulk. Deemed as incompetent, the Dark Gods abandoned him as their agent, and he was dumped into the microverse by them, with no way to return to his original size or home world. Still wanting to impress the Dark Gods in any possible way, he devised and executed a plan that turned him into the god of the microverse. He was confronted by the Hulk and Jarella, but managed to hypnotize and enslave the Hulk. However, that didn't last for too long, so out of desperation, Cyclops just accidentally annihilated himself with one of his devices. Poor little evil guy.
Number 5. Triune Understanding. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have more sinister motives. Tremont specifically used the organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races. He also used his villainous brothers Lord Templar and Pagan in an attack against the Avengers, in which he then blamed the superhero team for all the destruction that the battle had caused. The crazy thing is, although this organization is not one of the well-known Avengers adversaries, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a time.
Number 4. Sons of the Serpent. Now, over the years, there have been a total of 7 iterations of the Sons of the Serpent, so let's make our way through all of them, shall we? This group was initially formed by General Chen, and let's just say they were all about doing some pretty awful things against non-natives of their country. The original group was disbanded by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers after they unmasked General Chen as their leader. And then the second group didn't show up until a little bit while later, but they were also quickly defeated and disbanded by the Avengers and Black Panther. Financed by J.C. Pennyworth, the third iteration was all about destroying buildings in Harlem, but the Defenders had no trouble stopping them. Head over to LA after and you'd find the fourth iteration selling drugs and weapons under the leadership of the Hate Monger. Thankfully, War Machine shut them down for good and cut off all of their suppliers as well. The fifth iteration was super into magic and mysticism and led by Serpent Man himself, however it's actually unknown if they were ever stopped, so honestly they could be practicing to this very day. The six Sons of the Serpent controlled New York's justice system for a period of time, and they would have been a much bigger threat had they not been stopped by Daredevil. And then finally, the seventh iteration of the team went back to their roots and were patrolling the American border, not letting anyone into the country unless they were a citizen. Not only that though, they were also sending some of these immigrants to Carl Malice as test subjects. Thankfully though, Captain America caught wind of this and their villainous ways were put to an end.
Number 3, Chaos King. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the Epic Fear itself in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and it kind of became overshadowed by it. Ultimately, it also felt a lot less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikoboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse the effects of life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life, while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though, when it came to their magic type.
Number 2, the Circus of Crime. Now much like the Sons of the Serpent, the Circus of Crime has gone through many iterations, but let's just focus on the modern eras this time. Currently composed of the Ringmaster aka Maynard Tybalt, Bruto the Strongman, Clown, Tina the Fat Lady, and the Fire Eater, the Circus of Crime is kind of exactly what you'd expect after hearing their name. A circus that does crime. They followed a general formula while committing their crimes. They would give a performance before a large audience, then at some point, the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device concealed in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members would then rob the audience, who wouldn't remember anything about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and then the performance would just continue. They clashed with superheroes on a pretty regular basis, the most notable being the Hulk, Spider-Man, and of course the Avengers. Funnily enough though, one time Matt Murdock himself offered to defend them in court after having helped defeat them alongside Spider-Man. Crazy.
Number 1, Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a villainous entourage who appear as blue-collar sort of construction workers. In reality, they are Dirk Garthwaite, who was originally Wrecker, and his team comprised of Thunderbell, aka Elliot Franklin, previously a physicist, Bulldozer, previously a military sergeant known as Henry Camp, Pile Driver, aka Brian Kaluski, who used to be a farmer. They received their powers when they all came into contact with the crowbar as it was struck by some kind of magical lightning. They have attempted to take hold of the Avengers Mansion on more than one occasion, teaming up with the Masters of Evil during one of their attempts and kidnapping Misty Knight and using her to control Iron Fist another time. They are usually handily defeated by the Avengers when they go up against the team, however. It seems that magical construction equipment and mystical abilities, which are tied to that equipment, is not really enough to defeat the Avengers, I guess.
Number 10, the Devil. Okay, this first one isn't exactly shocking. One of the many versions of Loki, and one of the earliest, was in Venus issue 6, back in the late 40s, back in the 1940s, that's so old. See, Loki at this time was banished from Olympus to the Olympian underworld of Hades by Zeus. It's unclear what exactly he did, but considering the fact that he's referred to as Satan, it could be literally anything. I mean, insert bad thing here. You know? But he had a son, appropriately named Son of Satan. Okay, better than Kyle, I don't know. Is it? No. The two of them were punks. They were obsessed with being romantically involved with Venus. I mean, sure, she's the goddess of love and all, but the both of you want her? It's kind of weird, it's gross, it's a gross dynamic. What an awkward drive that must be. Loki's son disguised himself. He went to the offices of Beauty Magazine where Venus worked, and then he's like, "Hi, I'm Mr. Saturn." Like, pick a new name, first of all, way too close. They're like, "Satan?" He's like, "No, it's Saturn." Damn, that was close. Now his son was insane. He would cause these natural disasters on Earth, because you know, love. So Venus finally agreed to be with him, and then when he stopped fighting, Venus hucked a fireball at him and made him orbit the planet for all of eternity. So Devil or Kid Devil, whatever version you're getting, doesn't matter. Loki always wants the attention. Number 9, Kid Loki. One of the versions of Loki that we're rumored to get in the Disney Plus original is Kid Loki. Jack Veal's name has been whispered through the winds, and honestly, I could see it. I mean, look at him. He looks very Tom Hiddleston-y. Now in the comics, Kid Loki too was also a nuisance. Kid Loki came around in Thor issue 617. Now after adult Loki sacrificed himself for Asgard, he was sent with the Dark Avengers from Norman Osborn, and he had a change of heart in regards to, well, Asgard's fate. He returned to Earth looking better than ever, just with a few memories from his previous life. A little young Tot with a few memories, it's cool. Even when he's commanding the Dark Avengers and changes sides, he always has a backup plan. So that's what makes this character so compelling. This guy died 3 times in the MCU, and he's probably gonna die 4 times more. Maybe even 5 times, I don't know. I'm gonna bet 3 times. He's gonna die 3 times in the show. I could see them killing him once an episode, kind of like South Park Kenny style, you know? Now Kid Loki's cool because he travels with a companion, a trusty magpie named number 8, Ickle, which is Loki backwards if you didn't catch that already. So in Journey into Mystery issue 622, Kid Loki needed to figure out why he was reborn, right? All these memories have now vanished, so what's going on? So he transported himself to a hidden chamber where he met a spirit, the ghost of Christmas past. Nay, he met the spirit of himself from the past. So he caught Kid Loki up and explained why he wanted this fresh start, a free future. And Kid Loki was like, hold up, let me help you out here. How about you stop the whole being a spirit thing and I'll just turn you into a magpie. So now he's a magpie. Loki is now a magpie. Okay. Kid Loki now has a pretty exciting partner. A cute partner too, might I add. Little red eyes. How lovely. Number 7, Gunnar Goldman. Loki is a master of tricks. He can turn himself into a snake, make himself look like Steve Rogers, but when he takes the disguise of Norwegian super soldier Gunnar Goldman in the Ultimates, he makes Thor look like he's losing his mind. He makes everybody think that Thor is just a super soldier gone rogue, who has this magic belt that gives him Thor's powers. Thing is, this belt has been referenced in the MCU. Happy lists it off when he's packing up for moving day in Spider-Man Homecoming. So the Ultimates of course believe Gunnar and they're just about to attack Thor, but alas, the day is saved and Loki's schemes come to an end. For now. Number 6, Sleipnir. There have been a few origins for Sleipnir, and for this list we're gonna go with the more fun one. Also the more kind of gross one. So Odin tasked Loki to handle this situation, okay? So the situation was this dude came along and offered to fix Asgard's wall, but the terms were shady. See, if he completed the wall within 6 months, he would be awarded the moon, the sun, and Freya. The 3 things we all want in life. So they waited until the last brick and then Loki turned into this. He turned into a beautiful white mare and lured the man's horse away. Because see, the man turned out to be, well, not a man at all. He was rather a frost giant in disguise. So after the deal was made, Odin's like, oh, did we just shake on that? So Loki led his horse away, disguised also as a horse, while Thor handled the big guns himself. Now, if you thought that was a cool trick, let me tell you, Loki is so committed that he straight up gave birth after this to Sleipnir later on. Number 5, Scarlet Witch. This would mess things up a lot if Loki decided to do this. He's posed as an Avenger in the past a couple times now. He's taken on the form of Captain America, briefly, but in Mighty Avengers 21, Dark Reign, Henry Pym is put in charge to lead this new team. Now at this point, S.H.I.E.L.D. has fallen and Norman was running the Dark Avengers, so Scarlet Witch was calling the shots. But it's a list of alternate Lokis, and I just did this, so you're probably onto something. Loki's idea was to pose as the Maximoff twin to go against Osborn's team, but there was another twin that was onto something as well. Wanda's son Wiccan cast a spell that exposed Loki. So smart. Imagine if Wanda in the MCU is like, oh, Westview? That was Loki. Number 4, King Loki. Coming from the 2004 Loki miniseries, readers got to see Loki in a spot that he's been trying to be in for a very long time. The throne. Now we saw him take the throne at the end of Thor the Dark World, then the next time we saw him in Ragnarok he was disguised as Odin, eating grapes, watching some theater, while the realm spun into chaos. Now in the story he does more than Home Aloneing it. See, King Loki defeats Thor in the story, and he has Asgard in his grasp. Now if you're looking to see an entirely new take on the character, check out these 4 issues coming from the mind of Rob Roddy with pencils by Sad Ribic. Now I have no doubt we're going to see Loki's ruling in this show, so you might want to freshen up as well. Number 3, 616 Loki. Of course, one of the earliest versions of the character came to us from Stan Lee. It was introduced to readers in Journey into Mystery issue 85. Before Loki ends up getting up to anything crazy or godlike in the comics, he already was condemned by the gods, and his punishment was actually pretty brutal. He was stuck in a tree, not like up in a tree, like inside of a tree. He's to remain there until somebody sheds a tear for him. Now he's been in there ages, so at this point nobody really gives a damn. And then over time he begins to finally understand how to control the tree. Not like Harry Potter style, but you know, he can move a branch or two. So when Heimdall is passing by, he commands the tree to shed a leaf, and the timing was just so perfect, the leaf drifted right into his eye, boink, and then voila, we have now a shedded tear that was caused because of Loki. Technically. And his first plan of attack was to seek revenge against the one responsible for his hashtag tree time, Thor. And number 2, Lady Loki. Okay, so Lady Loki is practically confirmed for the Loki show. In a Vanity Fair interview, Loki's head writer Michael Waldron hinted that some Loki love stories are in the first season. And I know they say opposites attract, but Loki and Lady Loki sounds too good to pass up. She came around in Marvel Comics originally during Avengers Disassembled, when Loki stole a body that was intended for Lady Sif. So perhaps, and I know this is a reach, perhaps they could explain her absence in the MCU by maybe introducing this Lady Loki and then using that story in some way, shape, or form. It could also set up some interesting timeline changes with Thor, Love and Thunder. Or it could be just like 2014's Loki's Agent of Asgard, where Loki just disguises himself as a woman. But I feel like Sophia DiMartino will be her own version of the character. I'm honestly looking forward to anything we get. I'm looking forward to all these new characters and relationships that are coming with this show. All these alternate timeline stuff is fine, but Owen Wilson, Lady Loki, like yes. All the yes. And finally, number 1, 2012 Loki. Remember when the world was supposed to end in 2012? Well, that was the case for the MCU as well. Perhaps one of the worst versions of Loki is the main Loki we're getting for this TV show. When he failed to take over the world in 2012's Avengers, he got another chance thanks to, well, the Avengers. They decided a time heist in New York was the best way to bring back half the population, and while it worked, sure, for the most part, give or take a few casualties, the team was forced to run the clock back even more in history after they lost the Tesseract. Now, in that version, Loki grabbed it and vanished. Now, after this long, we get to now find out just where he went, and this is an interesting time for the trickster because he sacrificed his life at the beginning of Infinity War to try and save the day, but he promised to Thor right before he got the old Loki chokey, he promised to Thor that the sun would shine on them again someday. So could this show be that someday? Could this be the glimpse of hope? Now in trailers and clips, it looks like one of these episodes will feature a what if type scenario. We see Loki standing in front of New York City, only it looks much worse, and the Avengers Tower is out of commission. It's practically fallen to the ground. So I'm hoping we're gonna get to see an evil 2012 Loki again. This is gonna be really dark. Whatever happens in that episode doesn't look good at all. Whatever happened here and whatever timeline could point to Loki finally being the king of Asgard. Possibly. What do you guys think?
Number 10, superhuman stamina. Loki may appear Asgardian in appearance, but he is actually a frost giant, and it is from here that he derives much of his stamina. The frost giant's metabolism grants them what in comparison to humans is a superhuman level of stamina, even in comparison to some of the gods. He can exert himself at peak capacity for 24 hours, a whole day, before he even starts to get a little tired. On top of this, he can use his sorcery to augment his stamina even further. Number 9, disease immunity. As someone recovering from a cold, this is definitely nothing to sneeze at. Loki is immune to pretty much all diseases and known toxins. So if he falls ill, you know it's something to be worried about. Or it has some kind of nefarious spell behind it, or a super virus. Basically, you know it's serious business. Number 8, shapeshifter. Loki is also like his mythological inspiration, an accomplished shapeshifter. Initially, he could change into anything, any animal, and impersonate anyone. Change into Thor, Captain America, Sif. It was quite impressive. He was limited in that making himself look like the person didn't grant him their abilities, but he was able to mimic them at times with his sorcery, to whatever extent he could duplicate it. However, later, after some deaths and resurrections, he lost some of the extent of his shapeshifting ability. So he can now only change into forms that are also him, like his wolf form or his Lady Loki form. Why was this a result of his rebirth? Number 7, Allspeak. Like many Asgardians, Loki has been gifted with Allspeak. This means he can speak any language in all the 9 realms, all the Earth dialects, and some alien languages as well, meaning that whoever he encounters, he can then converse with them, which of course puts them at ease, and plays into his reputation as a silver tongue, but also as the father of lies. Number 6, turn objects into superhumans. Loki has a wide array of magical abilities and an innate talent for sorcery. He is said to be one of the best sorcerers in the 9 realms and the best in Asgard. So let's focus on his ability to turn inanimate objects into living beings, and soldiers or weapons. This is a temporary arrangement. They have some powers and it can exist for a short time, which can be a great distraction as well. If you're fighting someone that's turned into dust or a potted plant or something. He can also augment actual living people as well, but I mean, where's the fun in that when you can create like a living dish rack? Number 5, astral projection. Loki may not be telepathic, even if he does demonstrate some level of psionic ability, but he is able to astral project, and his range is great. He can separate his spiritual essence and send it across the realms, across dimensions. And he can do this even if he is incapacitated. He can also influence the actions of other beings from this form, as well as from its corporeal one. He can do this to animals as well. For example, he once controlled a whole flock of birds, so the birds, totally Loki. Number 4, or immortal? Well, you may be saying, well, obviously, aren't all the gods immortal? And the answer is not actually. They're just so extremely long-lived that by comparison, it seems like they are. Loki, however, has created a method to cheat death. Upon the death or destruction of his body, he will be reincarnated, because he has struck a deal with death that his name will be stricken or removed from the records, so it will be like he was never there in the first place. Number 3. Withstand Rogue. Loki is one of the few creatures that Rogue cannot steal powers from. This is because of his magical abilities. He can create a bit of a shield or barrier or just something that prevents Rogue from draining him, which is probably for the best. He has a lot of power, but the amount that Rogue can handle also vastly ranges, so sometimes it's a bit and sometimes it appears near endless. But either way, that power set will not be containing any of Loki's. Number 2. Healing factor. Loki, like most of the Asgardians, has a healing factor. He can withstand most injuries and already has an increased level of durability. Again, ignore MCU canon. Everyone is as frail as a twig over there, until the production gods decide that you aren't. However, Loki has also augmented his natural resistance with some magic. His powers are to the point where he can reattach severed limbs. He has even reattached his own head, which would be impressive to see. Number 1. Dense. Loki, again, like most Asgardians, has a body density that is 3 times that of human tissue, even though he looks the same as an average human. Well, we all know that appearances can be deceiving. This density not only makes him difficult to move, but also gives him superhuman strength. He's able to put much more weight behind his punches because he has more weight to put behind them. This density also aids with his durability as well.